Sarah had always imagined small-town life to be charming, a comforting balm after the hustle of the city. Siloam Springs, nestled in the Ozark foothills, seemed to offer just that. She envisioned cozy evenings, community events, and forging lasting friendships. Her new job as a daycare teacher at Little Sprouts was fulfilling in its own chaotic way. She was naturally outgoing and friendly, and it didn't long for her to strike up genuine friendships with a few of her colleagues, particularly Emma from the pre-K class and Mark, the affable school librarian. They shared coffees, weekend hikes, and dreams of settling into the quiet pace of small-town life. Yet, beneath the surface of her budding happiness, a persistent loneliness began to gnaw at her. It wasn't just missing her old life, it was something deeper, a creeping emptiness that seemed to intensify with each passing week. It started subtly. A general lack of enthusiasm on her days off. Then, the laughter that once bubbled easily felt strained, forced. Colors seemed less vibrant, music less uplifting. Sarah chalked it up to the adjustment, the long hours with energetic toddlers. But there was one child, a seemingly quiet and unassuming girl named Lily, who seemed to be a strange focal point of this creeping malaise. Lily was a shadow in the classroom. She rarely caused trouble, never threw tantrums, and spoke only when directly addressed. Yet, Sarah found herself inexplicably drained after interacting with her, even briefly. A light-hearted joke shared with another child would seem to dim in Lily's presence. Moments of genuine joy felt fleeting, as if a subtle chill had entered the room whenever Lily was near. The first truly odd instance happened during nap time. Sarah watched Lily, eyes wide open, just staring at the ceiling. When Sarah gently asked if she was okay, Lily slowly turned her head, fixing Sarah with a gaze that felt too old, too knowing for a 5-year-old. Sarah felt a peculiar jolt, a cold wave washing over her, leaving her surprisingly lethargic. Her limbs felt heavy, her thoughts sluggish. She shook it off, attributing it to overwhelming fatigue, but the unusual intensity of the moment lingered. Days turned into weeks, and the drain became more pronounced, more frequent. Sarah's apartment, once a vibrant sanctuary, felt increasingly cold and unwelcoming. She found herself staring blankly at walls, the simplest tasks feeling monumental. Her favorite songs sounded flat, tasteless. One afternoon, while helping Lily with a puzzle, Sarah felt an invisible tug at her chest, like a vacuum pulling at her very core. She gasped, a small, choked sound, her vision blurring at the edges, but Lily just continued placing pieces with unnerving precision, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk on her lips. Sarah felt a sudden, sharp jolt of fright, a primal warning she couldn't explain. Her heart hammered, not from exertion, but from a terror that bloomed from nothing. Then came the auditory hallucinations, insidious and chilling. Soft, almost inaudible sobbing began to accompany Lily's presence, particularly when Sarah felt the most depleted. It was a faint, desolate sound, like a whisper carried on a dead wind, a profound sorrow seeping into her ears. Sometimes, it was intertwined with a faint, chilling giggle, not Lily's own, but something hollow, ancient, and utterly devoid of mirth. Sarah would spin around, searching, her breath catching, but the classroom would be normal, full of children's innocent chatter. Her colleagues looked at her with growing concern when she'd ask, "Did you hear that?" "That, crying," and they would shake their heads, their faces etched with worry for her. Emma and Mark tried to be supportive, but their attempts at cheerfulness seemed to falter in Sarah's increasingly heavy presence. The visuals followed, mirroring her descent. One afternoon, while reading a story, Sarah glanced at Lily, and the child's reflection in the classroom window seemed to distort, stretch, and waver for a split second. Not Lily's reflection, but a fleeting glimpse of a figure that was tall and stretched, with impossibly long, spindly limbs and a face of profound, sorrowful emptiness, mouth agape in a silent scream. Sarah blinked hard, and it was gone, replaced by Lily's small, perfectly normal face, eyes fixed on the storybook. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a mix of shock, disbelief, and a dawning, icy terror. Her mind felt as if it were fracturing, unable to reconcile what she saw with what she knew to be real. Was she losing it? Was this depression, or something far worse? Seeking advice, more out of a desperate need to understand her own dwindling spirit than any concrete suspicion about a child, Sarah confided in Mrs. Gable, the school's aging administrative assistant. She spoke vaguely about feeling unusually drained and down, mentioning no names. Mrs. Gable, a woman with eyes that had seen many seasons of children pass through those doors, listened patiently. When Sarah mentioned the feeling had intensified over the school year, Mrs. Gable's brow furrowed slightly. "You know, dear," she said slowly, her voice barely a whisper, "that reminds me of something, a long time ago." She hesitated, a shadow passing over her face. "There was another teacher here, Miss Albright. Bright young woman, full of life. She had a student, a quiet little thing. After that child moved on to the next grade, Miss Albright, well, she just disappeared. No note, no word. They never found her." A cold dread washed over Sarah, more chilling than any of her recent visions. The pieces, however improbable, clicked into place with a sickening finality. Lily. The drain. The disappearance. It couldn't be, could it? Paranoia began to coil around her like a living, suffocating thing. Every glance from Lily felt like a physical touch, a cold hand reaching into her chest. Suddenly, the subtle instances took on a sinister, undeniable light. Lily's unnervingly still gaze. The way the air seemed to grow heavy, thick with a palpable despair, when she was near. The almost imperceptible way Sarah's own joy seemed to leak away in Lily's presence, leaving behind a bitter, metallic taste in her mouth. Panic began to set in, a frantic, desperate energy fueling her. Sarah knew the school kept basic files on students. With trembling hands, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs, she sought out Lily's records, then, surreptitiously, any available past information. Old sign-in sheets, brief parent-teacher communication logs. She found mentions of other schools, other towns, always with Lily moving on after a single year. There were no alarming notes, no behavioral issues reported, just a blankness. A void in the documented history that mirrored the growing emptiness within Sarah, an abyss she felt herself being drawn into. She tried to find information about Lily's family, but it was scarce. A single mother, listed with a perpetually changing address, untraceable numbers. No other relatives mentioned. It was as if Lily and her mother existed in the periphery, leaving no lasting trace, only the echoes of vanished lives. As Sarah's mental state worsened, her friendships began to fray. Emma and Mark, initially concerned, found themselves increasingly uncomfortable. Sarah's unpredictable mood swings, her distant stares, and her disturbing questions about feeling empty or hearing things pushed them away. Their invitations for coffee became less frequent, their smiles more strained. Sarah saw the retreat in their eyes, fueling her isolation, but she was too consumed by her own unraveling to do anything about it. In a desperate attempt to find an explanation, Sarah first visited her primary care provider. She underwent a battery of tests, blood work, neurological scans, physical exams. But everything came back normal. Her provider, baffled by the lack of a physical explanation, referred her to a psychiatrist in the nearest city and a local psychologist. She meticulously recounted her symptoms to them: the inexplicable lethargy, the loss of joy, the increasingly vivid hallucinations. Both professionals listened with grave expressions, prescribing medications, suggesting coping mechanisms, and recommending therapy. But nothing worked. The medication brought no relief. The therapy sessions felt like pointless exercises in futility. How could they treat a mind that was being actively, supernaturally drained? The realization dawned with a chilling clarity: the little girl was the culprit. Their conventional wisdom was useless against the insidious, otherworldly force that was consuming her. This failure only deepened her sense of isolation and amplified her terror. The last few weeks of school were a torment. Sarah found it increasingly difficult to function. The joy leached from her step, her smile a mere facade, a grimace she barely recognized. Her mind was a kaleidoscope of fear, confusion, and a terrifying certainty. Was she truly being victimized by a child, or was this her own descent into madness, a descent Lily merely accelerated? The sobbing and giggling in her head grew louder, a chilling, discordant symphony that only she could hear, a soundtrack to her unraveling. Sometimes the giggles were her own, bubbling up involuntarily, unsettling her even more. One afternoon, during a quiet play session, the cacophony in her mind reached a fever pitch. An overwhelming wave of despair, so profound it was physical, crashed over her. The room began to swim, blurring at the edges. The vibrant colors of the children's toys faded to muted grays, then to shifting, impossible shadows. The innocent sounds of play morphed into the distorted, echoing wails of countless unseen children, mixed with a piercing, mocking laughter that scraped against her nerves. Sarah felt frozen, her eyes wide with a terror that clawed at her throat, unable to move, unable to scream. Through the shimmering, distorted veil of her fracturing sanity, she saw Lily, no longer a small child. She stood above Sarah, impossibly elongated, misshapen, terrifyingly tall and skinny, her form wavering like a specter, made of smoke and raw shadow. Her limbs stretched unnaturally, her fingers tapering into needle-like points. Her face, stretched and distorted into a grotesque caricature, was one of profound, unending sadness, yet her eyes, devoid of any childlike innocence, held an ancient, malevolent glint of satisfaction. The sobbing and laughter in Sarah's head intensified into a swirling, deafening vortex, a maddening maelstrom of sound, each sob an echo of her own stolen joy, each giggle Lily's cruel triumph. Lily raised a long, thin hand, a skeletal claw, not quite touching, but Sarah felt the last vestiges of her light being pulled, violently, irrevocably, leaving behind only the cold, crushing weight of utter, absolute emptiness. The world went black for a moment, then snapped back into a grotesque semblance of reality. Lily, small and normal again, was looking at her with a peculiar, innocent curiosity, as if nothing had happened. But Sarah knew. She knew it had been real. The overwhelming sadness and despair that now saturated her very being was proof enough. Her mind, already teetering, finally fractured. The final day of school arrived. Sarah moved through it like a ghost, her face pale, her eyes hollow, unfocused. She responded in disjointed phrases, her movements stiff and jerky. As Lily's mother came to pick her up, Lily turned to Sarah, a slow, deliberate smile spreading across her lips. It wasn't a child's smile. It was a smile of utter triumph, a silent acknowledgement of the beautiful, vibrant thing she had meticulously broken. Lily and her mother disappeared through the doorway, a final, soft click as the door closed behind them. Sarah remained in the classroom. The other teachers left, their voices fading into the distance. Emma and Mark, who once offered comfort, now offered only wary glances before retreating. The sounds of cheerful goodbyes were replaced by the ever-present, deafening symphony of weeping and chilling giggles in Sarah's mind. She slid to the floor, her body racked with sobs that weren't entirely her own. They felt ancient, echoing the profound sorrow she now embodied, the collected grief of countless victims. Then, a strange, disjointed giggle, high and unsettling, bubbled up from her own throat, mingling with the internal chorus, a grotesque duet of despair and dark amusement. She was broken, a vessel emptied and refilled with the residue of countless stolen joys, a puppet of her own torment. The classroom around her began to subtly shift, to physically decay. The brightly painted walls seemed to darken, the cheerful posters peeling at the edges, their images warping, smiling faces turning into weeping visages. Dust motes, once dancing, now swirled like malevolent spirits in beams of light from cracked, grimy windows. Toys lay scattered, faded and broken, like forgotten relics of a joy that was no more, rapidly deteriorating as if centuries had passed in moments. The clean, crisp lines of the room melted, the vibrant colors bleeding and fading, slowly morphing into a state of utter disrepair, a chillingly accurate reflection of Sarah's shattered, decaying mind. Alone in the dim, crumbling room, Sarah continued to sob and giggle, a fractured melody of anguish and madness, lost in a private world where the light had died, and only the echoes of profound despair and a child's cruel, ancient amusement remained.
Flicker lights, they hum at night. Shadows stretch and twist and cry. Whispers crawl from unseen halls. Mind unravels, breaks and falls. Flicker lights, they hum at night. Shadows stretch and twist and fray. Whispers crawl from unseen halls. Mind unravels, breaks and falls. Echoed steps that lead nowhere. Breath hangs heavy in the air. Clock heads tremble, time's askew. Reality's a shuttered view. Drip, 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 the silence screams. Lost inside fragmented dreams. Walls are melting, faces stare. What is real when nothing's there? Tension tight like spiders thread. Thoughts collide inside my head. Fingers claw at something cold, losing grip on what I hold.